Good evening, everybody.
Kavod Harav, how are you?
Thank you, Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem.
All right, let's get started. Okay, so we're going on with the laws of Purim. So we said in the tour last week, we mentioned Afilu achi noagin leitanot b'shlosha asar. It says, nevertheless, we do have a custom to fast on the 13th of Adar, which is Tanit Esther, the lo adif lifnehem de Chanukah Purim, because so it says that this is the day before Purim, so it's the same as Hanukkah, and Purim are the same. Mishayamim from the other days, the Megillat Tanit. So when it comes to the day before, Purim and Hanukkah is the same as all the other days. So what does that mean? That we're allowed to fast. Ken katav Rosh, right? So it says in Bit Yosef, this is from the Rosh, this language. The Perk Kamad Megillah, and the first Perk of Megillah, which is Siman Chet. וכן כתבו תוספות, also תוספות, פרק ב' תעניות. דהא דאמינן חנוכה ופורים לא בטלו, that which we say, that Hanukkah and Purim were not nullified, right? רוצה לומר, הדינים שלהם, that means the laws of Hanukkah and Purim, לעשותן יום טוב, to make them into a holiday. ודלא כלהתענאה בהון, and also not to fast on them, אבל בדיניהם שלפניהם, when it comes to the din of, the day before, Batlu, so that has already been nullified. But Tiltzu Od, so they gave it also another answer. The Chevan de Yom Shalifne, since the day before the holiday, Hapurim, which is before Purim, Nit Batel was nullified, Miyom Tov Dideh, it doesn't have the status of a holiday. Shayur Gilim Lasot Bo, that they used to do in those days, right? In those days, it was a holiday. Nit Batel Yom Tov Shalom. So the Yom Tov has been nullified. So therefore, we also say שיתבטל משום טעם יום שלפני הפורים. So therefore, he says, also gets nullified as a result the day before Purim. Because that's what we say, besamuch, close by. Gabe Yom Shelifnei Nikanor, right? The same thing applies also to the day which was before the day of Yom Nikanor, right? Which was another holiday that they used to celebrate in the second temple. And now we don't do it anymore. It was also nullified, right? As we said, Gabe Yom Tov Turianus, also another one, right? Which is called Turianus. These names are names of certain people that the holiday was called after them. Something like that, right? The Chevan de Batlu b'Yom Tov, Miyom Tov, since they got nullified from being a holiday, Shelahem lo yasu mishum Yom Tov haba achrehem. So therefore, they're not going to be forbidden, right? The day after to be a holiday. V'aran iksha al zeh. So the Ran asks on this Tosfot, right? The Perek Shenit the Taniot. Where is that? The second Perek of Tanit, Zayin Amud Aleph. Katav she'Raza, right? Tiretz. That he says that the Raza answers the Chevan de Purim divrei Kabbalah. Yeah, so I'm sorry. Just to clarify, right? What I said regarding the Ran, I think what it means is like this, right? That he also asked the same question as the Tosfot, something like that. Okay, whatever. Not that he asked on Tosfot. I think that's the more proper way to look at it, but we'll see, right? Anyway, so he says, "V'katav Raza tiretz tichevan de Purim divrei Kabbalah." So he answers like this, right? The Raza answers. Who's the Raza? Rabbi Zerachia Halevi. That's his name. So he says, right? The Chevan de Purim divrei Kabbalah. That since Purim is Kabbalah. So what does it mean Kabbalah, right? We're not talking about the Kabbalah of the right, the secrets of the Torah. That's not what it means here. Kabbalah means that it was something that was decreed by the prophets. So it's like in between two different classifications, sandwiched in between. What does that mean? We have things which are from the Torah, right? The Torah tells us not to do. And then we have things which are from the rabbis, which is forbidden, So, two different classifications. But we have also one third one, which is in the middle of these two, which is called Divrei Kabbalah. So as we said, right, what does that mean? It was decreed by the prophets, which has a little bit of a higher status than something that was decreed by the rabbis, and a little bit lower than the status of something that was written in the Torah or decreed by the Torah. Okay. But Divrei Kabbalah kemo Divrei Torah. So he says, so Divrei Kabbalah is like the words of Torah. In other words, it's closer to the Torah than the words of the rabbis. Kemo Divrei Torah. V'havele keshabbatot v'yamim tovim. So it's as if we're talking about Shabbat and Yom Tov, which is from the Torah. The Tanya, because it says in the Braita, Hem asurim lifnehem ulacharem, right? So these days are forbidden, as we said, these holidays that we mentioned are forbidden the day before and the day after, right? But I'm sorry, I didn't say it right. Hem asurim, it says like this, right? They're forbidden, right? Lifnehem ulacharem mutarim, but before and after they're permitted. Lefishehem divrei Torah. Why? Because it's from the Torah. But divrei Torah en sarich chizuk, and the words of Torah don't need to be strengthened. So what does that mean? It means that people take the words of the Torah very seriously, relatively speaking, right? So therefore, you don't need to add anything to it. It's good as it is, right? You don't need to strengthen it. That's why right here we say that the day before and the day after are permitted. Okay, good.
Kavod Harav, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
the day before, the day after, you mean the fast that is before the holiday or after?
The day before and the day after the holiday, it's permitted to fast or to eulogize, right? Things like this.
And this is to pretty much clarify what we spoke about in this Sefer, Megillat Tanit, no?
Exactly. That's where we're still talking about that, right? That's still our topic. We're still on that topic.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so that's the way it goes, right? Good. V'shem Albergiloni, right? So in the name of this rabbi, Amru decheva dekaimalan de batala Megillat Tanit. He says like this, right? Since we hold that this Megillat Tanit was already nullified, Alma datan shel chachamim leakel. So therefore, right, you see from there that the rabbis hold here that we should be lenient. Uvatel and nullify. Rufichach says therefore, afal pi shelo batlu Chanukah. Even though, right, these holidays were not nullified, Hanukkah and Purim, but we don't have to be so machmir either. We don't have to be so stringent, The dailanu nifsok kishmuel. So therefore, right, it suffices to paskin like Shmuel, shepasak begemara, that paskin the Gemara halacha ke Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, right? That he paskin like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Damar lifnehem ulacharem mutar, because he said, right, that the day before and the day after is allowed. Adkan, that's the end of it. Okay, good. So that's the words of the Ran. Very good. Ve'arosh, what about the Rosh? Katab b'perek bet Danielov, right? It says the Rosh there. Kedivri Raza, right? He writes the Raza. So like the Raza. So you see, right, that the Rishonim, the early authorities, seem to agree, right, that pretty much the day before and the day after are permitted. That's pretty much the story. Okay. Katav Rambam, b'perek Yudal Milchot Avel, right? So here says the Rambam, mutar lispod lifnei Chanukah uPurim. So he also says, right, that you're allowed to eulogize the day before Chanukah and Purim, ulacharem, also the day after. V'hu me'ata'amim mishkatabtin. He says it's because of the reasons that we just mentioned, right? So it seems like it's pretty much agreed on, right, that the day and the day after and the day before is allowed, according to these authorities, right? Okay, good.
Kabbalah, does this apply also to when rabbis passed away, to be eulogized or no? Or it's just...
I'm sorry, what's the question?
So when it comes to eulogizing, if it's your teacher, and it happened, God forbid, the day after or the day, during this period that we're not supposed to eulogize.
We said, right, it's even allowed for a regular guy. All the more it's allowed for a rabbi, you know what I mean? All the more so. So
he doesn't get eulogized during these days? The rabbi.
No, we said, right, that if it's allowed for the regular person, all the more so it's allowed for the rabbi to eulogize.
Okay. Day before and day after. Yeah.
So that's the way it is. Okay, good. So let's go on. So he says, Vagot Maimonides, right, in this book, he says, Katuv Beresh Hilchot Tanit, in the beginning of the laws of Tanit, Rabbeinu Katav the Chanukah or Purim Lifnehem Ulacharem Mutar. Right, so he says that Rabbeinu, which is the right, he's talking about the Rambam, right? Rabbeinu, the Rambam, she Be'ilchot Tanit, right, which is in the laws of Tanit and laws of I'm sorry, whatever this is. Anyway, Katav the Chanukah Purim Lifnehem, right? So Mutar. So he says, right, the Rambam, that that it's allowed the day before and the day after, right? The Chanukah mifarsa manisa gam minhag kol Yisrael litanot bayom shelifnei Purim. So he says because Chanukah, right, the miracle is very publicized, very well known, and also he says everybody fasts, right, the day before Purim, which is the 13th, the Tanit Esther. So you see from there, right, that we're not particular about this at all. So he says, but he says that's not really a proof, though. Oh, why is that? The Tanit Esther Shema Shani. So it says maybe it could be that Tanit Esther is different. Why? The Chashiv Lan Tanit Chova, because it's considered like an obligation. Kevan Dehave Midivri Geonim. Why? Because it comes from the words of the Geonim. Uminhag Kol Yisrael. It's a custom amongst all the Jews. About Tanit Reshut Leolam Asur. But he says when it comes to a fast, which is like a what do you call it, optional, so that's going to be forbidden. Could be. It's possible that it could be forbidden. Ad kan shano. So that's the way he concludes. But he says the Bet Yosef, right, that even though this rabbi is a little bit more stringent, but since we already brought the other opinions, which were more lenient, right, so therefore, that's how we go. So what does that mean? That we allow everything, right, the day before, day after. No, there's no problem. Whether it's eulogy, whether it's fasting, whether it's optional or obligatory, whatever it may be. Okay, good. So let's go on. Right? So he says there's also he says there's also another source which is in the Gemara, that it says there that the 13th of Adar is a time of assembly, right? That's what it means. The Cholhi, right? So what does that mean? It was like a holiday in those days. They used to assemble. Because we just said, right, that there's no prohibition to fast the day before Purim. So now he says, right, that it's also proper to fast on that day. That's what it says in Rosh Ve'aran. And the Ran also, Beresh, Megillah, in the beginning of Megillah, Ahad Aminan, regarding that which we said in the Megillah, Bet Amud Aleph, Shlosha Asar Zman Keilah Lechol Hi. So again, right, it says there that the 13th is a time of assembly. Peresh Rashi explains, what does that mean, right? So he says, Zman Milchama Derabenu Tam. So he says, right, that Zman Milchama, what does that mean? That the 13th was the day that the Jews assembled in the time of Mordechai and Esther to wage the war against the enemies. So he says the Rabbeinu Tam Hikshala, but Rabbeinu Tam asked on this, right? He had a question on this. Right? And he also said, right, that the 13th is the time of assembly that they had to wage the war. So he explains it differently, right? What it means that they assemble to do Tanit Esther, right? They assemble to fast. And what happens is that the villagers come to the towns to say supplications, right? Because that's the day that they stood up, to rise up against their enemies in the time of Esther, right? So they needed some, divine mercies there. So he says the same thing we find that when Moshe Rabbeinu went to fight with Amalek, he also made a fast day, right, in order to supplicate God. So it says in the pasuk, right? It says in the verse that Moshe, Aharon, and Hur, they went up to the top of the mountain, right, to the hill, whatever. The Darshinan b'Masechet Taniot, and we expound there in the Gemara about this. Mikan Tanit Tzibur shetzarich shlosha. Right, so you see from there he says, right in the Gemara, that for a public fast, right, you need 3. Mikan yireh the Rabbeinu Tam Sa'ad Tanit Esther. So from there, Rabbeinu Tam learns that there's a source for the Tanit Esther, custom Tanit Esther. Shanu Osim, that we do. Kemo she'asu b'mei Mordechai, like they did in the times of Mordechai and Esther, Shenikalu Hayudim la'amod al nafsham, that the Jews, right, stood up and rose up against their enemies, to protect themselves. V'lo matzinu lo semech b'shum makom. So he says, we don't find a source for this in any place. Ela mikan, only here, right? That's the only source that there is. That's the only illusion that we have. Umash anu makdimim latanit yom chamishi. So he says that which we move up the fast to Thursday. Why do we do that? Right? If it falls Purim, right, on Sunday, so we move up the fast to Thursday. Why do we do that? And we don't make it Be'erev Shabbat. We don't do it on Friday, right? Somebody asked me about this, by the way, just recently when we had the last fast, right? The 10th of Tevet, a couple of weeks ago. They asked me, right? Because we did it on Friday, that one we can do on Friday, right? The fast of 10th of Tevet. But when it comes to, Tanit Esther, we don't do it on Friday. So that's what he's asking here, the same thing, that we don't do Tanit Esther on Friday. Why not? נמצא בתשובת הגאונים לפי שרגילים להתנות לרבות לסליחות בתחנונים ולא ייתכן לעשות כן בערב שבת. So he says, because there's a custom to do lots of supplications on that day, and therefore it is not proper to do it on Friday, Erev Shabbat. So that's why we don't do it on Friday. Why is that? What's the reason why? What do we care so much, right, about supplications on Friday? So he says, "Shelo yuchlu litruach lichvod Shabbat," because then they won't be able to prepare Shabbat, right? They're doing too many supplications, so there won't be time, to go shopping, right, and to clean the house, and cook and clean, right, whatever, all that stuff. There won't be time, because they're too busy with the supplications. Okay, good. So, yeah. Masechet Sofrim, right? Masechet Sofrim, Ita, it says over there, Shrabotenu Shvimarav Mitanin. So he says, really, the truth is that in Eretz Israel, they were fasting Adar Shloshat Taniot, right? In Adar, they did 3 fasts. Can you imagine? Wow. We only do 1, right? And they did 3. So what was that? Right? Benisan Shedigalu Bo Avotenu. I'm sorry, I skipped something here. Yeah, right. So it says, what are the 3 that we do in Adar? Taniot shel Esther, right? First we have Esther. Ve'afal pi she'otam hayu benisan. Says even though in history, right, when this happened, historically speaking, the fasts were decreed in Nisan. Lo hayu rotzim litanot benisan, but it says they didn't want to do the fast in Nisan like forever, for generations. Shenigalu bo, because they were redeemed in Nisan, so it's not proper to be fasting in that month. Avotenu, right? Ve'hukam Mishkan ad keneshanu, and also the Mishkan was erected in that month. So therefore, the rabbis tried to avoid having any fast days on on Nisan, right? The truth is the only one that we do is the of the firstborn, right? The firstborn fast in Nisan, right? But not the whole community. Okay. Heavy Hadi Aminan says afterwards he brings that which we said, Besor Pekam de Rosh Hashanah, in the end of the first Pek Rosh Hashanah. The Afal Gab the Batla Megillat Tanit, that even though that the Megillat Tanit was nullified, as we said, right? Chanukah Purim lo batlu, but these 2 holidays were not nullified. Katav alav ite ba'el memar. So he says, right? He writes about this that there are those who want to say, Kevan de lo batlu okmu adinayu. Since they were not nullified, so therefore, right, we leave it the way it is. In other words, the way it was decreed originally. What does that mean? So therefore, the day before, the day after is forbidden. But there are those who say the opposite, right? That the day before and after are allowed. So that's the reasonable opinion. So therefore, he says, custom is to fast on the 13th of Adar. So he says that which we just explained above, Zman Keila, right? That there's a time of assembly also on that day. For everybody, have Tanit Esther Takanat Chachamim. So it says the fast of Esther is like a decree of the rabbis, right? It's an enactment. It was before the Megillat Tanit was nullified. That kind of. So therefore, they just write. So it preceded, right, that whole Megillat Tanit thing. That's what they're trying to say. So he says the Mordechai also wrote at length to give a reason why we assemble, why we fast on the eve of Purim. Okay. So let's just make sure we got everything straight here. מגילת תענית עד כאן השונו. Yeah, okay, all right. It's pretty good. Everything is good. So he goes on, the Bet Yosef. Mash Katab, right? That which he wrote, that which we push up, right? The Tanit Esther to the third Thursday. When Purim falls on Sunday, why do we do that? So Bet Yosef says, right, it's telling you like this. You shouldn't say im ita detanit zet it can be tishatenu b'mei Mordechai. That if this fast was decreed because of the times of Mordechai, what happened over there, and historically, they decreed on the 13th, Shu Yom HaMilchama, which is the day of the war, the day of the battle, Kishachal Purim b'Motzi Shabbat, when Purim falls on Sunday, we should have fasted Be'erev Shabbat. We should have fasted on Friday. Because we want to make it as close as we can to the 13th, right? Whatever is possible. Right? And since we see that we fast on Thursday, which is not so close, right? It's like 2 days away. So he says it seems that the reason of this fast that we do on Tanit Esther is not because they fasted in times of Mordechai, Bishlosha on the 13th, Shu Yom HaMilchama, which was the day of the war. Ela mitam acher, it was a different reason. Anu nohagim litanot, there's a different reason why we fast. Lecha katav de leolam, therefore he wrote that what we do is, right, mitam zeh, anu mitanin, that this is the reason why we fast, because Shechal Purim b'Motzi Shabbat, when Purim falls on Sunday, Bedin hu sheitanu bo b'yom shishi. Really, right? The truth is, according to halacha, they should be really doing the fast on Friday. Ela mipnei sheregilim b'ta'anit b'slichot. But he says, since we already said that we're accustomed to do a lot of supplications and fast right during the fast day. Mishum dekashi aleh, and it's difficult. Im ken shanu mitanin ta'anit zeh. That if so, right, that we fast this fast, Zecher Latanit Mordechai, which is a remembrance for the fast of Mordechai, Esther and Esther. Lama en anu mitanin ashlosha taniot sheitanu hem. Why don't we do 3 days of fasting like they did, right? Because the truth is, right, that it says in the Megillah that they fasted for 3 days, in the time of Esther, and we only do one, right? So what happened, right? How do we change that? So he says, we don't do those 3 fasts that they did in Nisan. Therefore, he wrote that, right, the rabbis of Israel, that the rabbis used to fast over their 3 fasts. So in other words, in Israel, they used to do just like they did in the time of Esther, right? Which is that they fasted for 3 days in Nisan. Amazing, right? But he says we don't do it. You know why? Because it's too hard, for the community to fast for 3 days. Can you imagine fasting 3 days in a row? Right? It's gonna, most people are gonna get knocked out by that. So that's why we don't do it. What can you do, right? How can you do something so difficult? Today we don't have the strength for that. That's the whole thing.
We're complaining about half a day,
Right, exactly. Yeah, we're very weak, so we can't do it. Okay, good. So it goes on. And now what she said to Tur, that when Purim falls on Sunday, right, we push up the fast to Thursday. That's what it says in Rokiach. B'Shem HaShe'el Tot, right, the name of She'el Tot. Katuv b'Shibulei Leket, right? It says in this book, Matzati b'Shem Rashi. So as I found the name of Rashi, Maaseh Haya, there was a certain story that occurred. Ve'ira Purim be'echad b'Shabbat. So Purim came out on Sunday, one time, right? So the community pushed it up to Thursday, right? Like we do today. Kaminhag, like the custom. Ubat isha echad shaita tzricha lirkov etzel hashilton. Oh, so this is there was one lady that came, right? That she needed to ride, right, to go to the government, whatever, or something like that, right? V'shala lerabenu im hi yechola litanot lemachar. So he asked, right, to the rabbi, is she allowed to fast the day after, to make up for it, because Right now, she can't. Today, she needs to eat, because she needs to travel. So it's hard for her, to travel and fast. So it tells the rabbi answers her, right? Answers her that this fast is from the Torah. He says, it's not from the rabbis. I'm sorry, I didn't say it right. One more time. He answers like this, right? It's not from the Torah, this fast. It's not from the rabbis. Not this and not that. It's just a custom, right? By the way, that's how we hold. It's called a custom, this fast. It's not really a decree so much. That's what it says in the Shulchan Aruch. Anyway, right? Tanit Esther and Mordechai ayu b'mei Pesach, because really the fast of Esther and Mordechai was in the times of Passover. You know what I mean? It wasn't in the times of Purim. Right? Okay. Ve'im nefesh adam lomar divrei atzamot v'zakatam katuv. But it says, if you cannot tell me, right? It says over there in the Megillah that there was fasts and right they cried out. That's not. He says that's not the way to explain it. Rather, so it's talking about the fasts that already passed by them, in times of Haman. So therefore they accepted, right, to the holiday Purim, to be a remembrance about that. The dorot, right, for generations, hanes for the right the miracle. Nevertheless, he says asur lo leadam lifrosh min hatzibur. Nevertheless, right, even though it's only a custom that fast, you shouldn't deviate from the community and fast with them. You should fast with them. Mishum lo titgodedu. Why? Because it says, right, this pasuk, this verse. Lo titgodedu. What does it mean? Lo titgodedu. It means, right, don't make factions, in the Jewish people, right? Like everybody should be doing the same. I mean, so he says, right, there are some prushim, right, which are like, saintly people that fast with the community, Yom Chamishi, on Thursday, the Chozrim Itanin, and then they fast again, right, Yom Shishi on Friday. So they do 2 days. Because they want the fast to be juxtaposed to Purim. Rabbi Kara Alehem Kasir Bechoshech Olech, right? And Rabbi, right, says, my rabbi said about them, that they're going in darkness, Why is that? They're fools. Why? Because they're doing too much, like it's too much, fasting 2 days. Not recommended to do that. So he says, why? Because it's only a custom, so now what are you doing? You're making the custom, and doing 2 days, doubling it, It's a little bit exaggerated. And you're being stringent, like it was as if it was from the Torah, It's just a custom. Okay. So he says, since right the public right fasts on Thursday, that's custom. So he says, therefore, that's good enough, right? What do you need to know? Double the custom. What's the purpose of that? So it's also written in this book as well. Let me just see how far this goes, right? This whole thing here. Yeah, we're almost done. So we'll just finish it off.
Can we finish? Yeah, that would be great.
Of course, yes. So it says, of course. So it says, Katav Rambam, right? It says in Rambam, Beperek Hey Milchot Tani. It says over there, Nagu Kol Yisrael Bizmanim Elu Litanot Bishlosha Asar. Right? Again, he also says, right, the Rambam, that this is only a custom, to do this fast. 13th of Adar, so this is a remembrance, right, of what they did in times of Haman. As it says in the pasuk, in the verse, right, which is in the Megillah, so says the Rambam, right, if the 13th falls on Shabbat, so then we're going to fast on Thursday, which is going to be the 11th of Adar. Katav Rabbi Magid, says Rabbi Magid, Hatam Refi She'i Efshar Le'acher Ad Yom Rishon. So he says the reason why we do it on Thursday is because we can't put it off until the Sunday, which is afterwards, lefi shehu Purim, because that's going to be Purim, right? You're going to can't fast on Purim. It says also we shouldn't fast on Friday because it's the kavod of Shabbat, the honor of Shabbat. But he says even though the halacha was paskin in Eruvin, that we do fast on Fridays. If the fast falls on a Friday, we do fast on Friday. We do it and we finish it. But that's only if it fell on Friday, right? Here it didn't fall on Friday, it fell on Shabbat. That's something else. Lo be'erev Shabbat. But if you're going to push it off, or he says, right, mizmano, from its time anyway, and kovin lo be'erev Shabbat. So therefore, we're not going to do it on Friday, right? If you're going to push it to Thursday, right? What's the point of doing it on Friday? Push it all the way. That's what it says in the Tshuvot of the Geonim. Oh, there you go. Right. So that's the end of the Bet Yosef. Very good, Baruch Hashem. Okay. So let's see.
This Thursday is the one before, the 11th, as it was stated prior, right? On the 11th
right.
of
the Thursday is the 11th. Yes.
Thank you.
God bless. Okay, very good. So yeah, let's see what we got left here. Okay, we're done with the tour pretty much, right? We're done with the Bet Yosef. So all we got left is the Shulchan Aruch. Very good. So let's see the Shulchan Aruch here. Very nice. Here's the Shulchan Aruch. Mit'anim b'yud gimel b'adar, right? We fast on the 13th of Adar, right, as we just mentioned. Ve'im chal Purim be'echad b'Shabbat. If Purim still falls on Sunday, maktimim le'atanot be'yom chamishi. So then we push the fast to Thursday, right, as we said. Okay, so says the Ramah here, "V'tanit ze eno choba." So he brings down, right, what we just saw in Bet Yosef. Right, that this fast is not really an obligation. What does that mean? It's only a custom, quote unquote, right? So he says, therefore, right, if there's a need to be lenient about it, you can be lenient. So what does it mean, right? Where do you want to be lenient? What does it mean to be lenient, by the way? It means not to fast, right? To avoid fasting. So when can we be avoided? When can we be lenient? So it says, me'ubarot, right? For instance, pregnant woman, omnikot, or nursing woman, right? Or somebody who's sick, right? Shemo sakana. Even if he's just got, like, let's say, a flu, right? He's, and he's in bed, right? He's bedridden. He's got a flu, so he's really absolved. He doesn't have to fast. You know what I mean? Okay, so even though there's no danger, right, in the illness that he has, sometimes flus can be dangerous. By the way, people die from flus. You know how it is, right? God forbid. You know how it is. Okay, so I don't have to tell you. But he says, but if you're a healthy guy, right, don't try to to get the weasel out of it. Because there's no reason for that. It's a custom, so everybody does it. You should do it too. So don't don't try to weasel out of it. Only if you're sick, or if you have some kind of an issue going on, right? What does that mean? I think it says over here the Ramah, right? I skipped something over here in the Ramah, right? Even if you just have like an ache, like let's say your eye hurts, right, or whatever, God forbid, shame, right, or right, something like that. Even if he has some kind of aches, let's say he's got a migraine, so he's absolved from a migraine, right? That's a good example, Unfortunately, a lot of people suffer from that today, Hey, I hate when I see it. People really suffer from it, but right. Anyway, right? That's the way it is. So he says, right? So he says, if they really have a problem, like that, right, where they have something aches, there's an ache in the body, right? So he says they can absolve themselves, and they can fast another day. But he says, right, if it's, as we said, right, if he's healthy, he shouldn't absolve himself just for nothing. Right, that's not allowed. So he says, right, like this, that so he says, if Purim falls on Sunday, as we just mentioned, and we fast on Thursday, the Chalbo Brit Milah, and let's say you have Brit Milah now, right? No, Milah, right? On Thursday. Mutar lechol ala Milah. So he says, he says you're allowed to eat for the seudah of the Milah, right? The meal that they make for the Milah, because it's like a seudat mitzvah. So you're allowed to, he says. So he says those people who ate, he says, on Thursday for the Milah, they should fast the day after, right? On Friday, right? Interesting, The truth is that, I don't see anybody doing things like this, but nowadays. But anyway, right? What we do see is that if a person is sick, or he's got like a migraine, as we said, right? He's absolved. So that's the way it is. Why is that? What's the reason why? Usually we don't say that for a fast day, right? If you just have like just a pain, some kind of pain. But here, the reason why we say it is because it's a custom. The rabbis didn't decree this. So therefore, right, since it's only a minhag, so in a time of distress, right, in time of the difficulty, you can absolve yourself from there. Okay, very good. So I think we're done here. That's pretty much it. Let me just see if there's anything in the Shulchan Aruch left over here. Okay. Yeah, there's another one here. No, one more line. Yesh mitanim gimel yamim zecher l'tanit Esther. Right. So there are also some who fast 3 days, right, because of Esther. So you know what we're talking about, right? We're talking about in Nisan, right? Nobody does this today, So pretty much today, right? I don't think you're going to find anybody who does this, except maybe some, very saintly people. Like Baba Sali or something, people like this, right? Otherwise, where are you going to find people like this, fasting 3 days? I mean, it's not really very common. So this has already pretty much left the world, right? As we know it. 3-day fasting, right? Nobody does this anymore. But, it's just interesting to know that, they used to do it, as we said, right? In the times of the Talmud, they used to do it. Okay, interesting. So let's see what we got left here. That's it. We're done. Okay, so chapter is finished. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with the wealth, health, happiness. We'll see you tomorrow, B'ezras Hashem. Laila Tov, Chazak u'Baruch.
Thank you so much, Amen.
Yes, all the best.
Thank you.